A courtroom filled with anticipation. Lawyers rustling papers, spectators whispering, the distant sound of a gavel striking in another chamber. Judge Miranda Ellis sits at the bench, her gaze steady. It's another day, another case, or so it seems. When the bailiff calls the case, the state of Louisiana versus Daniel Brooks, Miranda shifts in her seat. Her fingers grip the edge of the bench as she glances at the file. Assault, robbery, resisting arrest. A familiar ache settles in her chest, another lost soul in the system. But then, the door opens, and Daniel Brooks is escorted in, shackled at the wrists and ankles. And everything changes. Her heart skips a beat. She knows him. She knew him. The boy she grew up with, the one she'd raced bicycles with, spent countless summer afternoons under the magnolia tree with, the one she'd made promises to always have each other's backs, no matter what. But the man standing before her now is different. His face is lined with years of hardship, his posture slumped, yet his eyes, those deep, soulful eyes, are unmistakable. Miranda's hand tightens around the gavel. For the first time in her career, she hesitates. The room seems to shrink. She struggles to breathe. Daniel looks up at her. Recognition flickers in his eyes. But then, just as quickly, he looks away, his head bowing slightly. The courtroom falls silent. Miranda clears her throat and forces herself to speak. Mr. Brooks, you stand accused of assault and robbery. How do you plead? His voice is rough, almost unrecognizable. Not guilty, Your Honor. A sharp pang in Miranda's chest. She wants to stop everything, to demand answers. What happened to him? How did they end up here? But she can't. She's the judge. She has to stay impartial. Proceed, she says, her voice steadier than she feels. The prosecutor's opening statement cuts through the tension. He describes how Daniel allegedly walked into a convenience store, attacked the clerk, and stole from the register. The evidence, he says, is clear. Miranda watches Daniel as the prosecutor speaks. His shoulders are hunched, his hands clasped. But his face? It's unreadable. Did he really do it? Or is there more to this story? The defense attorney, Lily Porter, rises, her voice calm, but with an edge of quiet defiance. This case is not as straightforward as the prosecution would have you believe, she says. My client, Daniel Brooks, has maintained his innocence. We'll show you that things aren't as simple as they seem. The first witness is called, the store clerk who was allegedly attacked. He describes seeing a man in a red hoodie entering the store, arguing with the cashier, then lunging over the counter. But something about his testimony feels rehearsed. Lily doesn't waste time. Mr. Chambers, she asks, you stated the man was wearing a red hoodie, correct? Yes. Did you see his face clearly? The clerk hesitates. Not really. It was dark. The hood was up. Lily nods, pacing slowly, her voice cutting through the air. So you're saying you can't definitively identify my client? The witness stammers. Lily's questioning is like a surgical strike. She leaves him no room to wiggle. No further questions, she says, her voice firm. Miranda watches Daniel. He shifts slightly in his seat, his shoulders straightening. Could this be the break he needs? The tiniest crack in the prosecution's case. The next piece of evidence is a grainy surveillance video. The figure in the footage is blurry, indistinct, but the prosecution insists it's Daniel. Miranda watches closely. The figure in the red hoodie moves quickly, grabbing something off the counter. The video ends abruptly. Miranda feels the weight of the uncertainty. Could this really be Daniel? The courtroom adjourns for lunch. Miranda steps into her chambers, trying to clear her head. Her assistant, Margaret, approaches. Judge, you okay? You seem distracted, Margaret asks gently. Miranda shakes her head. I'm fine, just a lot on my mind, she says, though it's not true. How could she be fine when someone she once cared for is fighting for his freedom, and she's the one deciding his fate? The trial resumes. The prosecutor leans into his opening argument, hammering home the violence of the crime. But Lily counters with something the jury doesn't expect: doubt. Her cross-examination of the arresting officer, Detective Harris, exposes a critical flaw in the case. He couldn't even find a red hoodie on Daniel when he arrested him. In fact, Harris didn't even search the area where Daniel was detained. The officer's confidence wavers. Miranda notices it. The jury notices it. The defense's expert witness casts further doubt on the reliability of the surveillance footage. The timestamp on the video has been altered. There's no way to confirm it's Daniel in the footage. A shadow of doubt creeps into the room. Miranda feels it too. The case isn't as clear-cut as she thought. The moment arrives when Daniel is called to testify. He rises slowly, the chains around his wrists clinking softly as he walks to the stand. His voice, when it comes, is quiet, but carries a raw sincerity. "I've made mistakes in my life," he says, his eyes scanning the courtroom. "But I didn't do this. That night I was walking home. The cops just stopped me because I fit the description." His voice cracks as he continues. "I've been fighting my whole life, fighting to be seen as more than what people think of me. But this... I'm tired. I just want the truth to matter." Miranda's heart tightens. She watches his words sink into the jury, into the room. His plea isn't just for justice, it's for humanity. The jury deliberates for hours. The tension is unbearable. Miranda sits quietly, the weight of her decision heavy in the air. Finally, the verdict is announced. "We find the defendant not guilty." The courtroom explodes into chaos. Some cheer, others whisper in disbelief. Miranda watches Daniel. His face is unreadable. He's been set free, but she knows it's not over. His victory comes at a price. The courtroom empties, but Miranda stays behind. Daniel finishes signing his release papers, and for the first time since the trial began, he looks directly at her. "You don't owe me anything, Miranda," he says softly. "But I need to know, why didn't you say anything?" Miranda's throat tightens. She wants to say something, anything, but the words catch in her chest. "I couldn't," she whispers. "I had to be fair." Daniel studies her for a long moment. Then, almost to himself, he mutters, "Fair. The world's never been fair to me, Miranda. Not for people like me." A weight hangs in the air between them. The words stung, but they were true. Miranda nods slowly, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I know," she says quietly, "and I'm sorry." Daniel stands there for a moment, his expression softening. Then, without another word, he turns and walks away. Miranda watches him go. Her heart aches. She's done her job. The law has been upheld. But the trial revealed something deeper. Justice isn't just about verdicts. It's about the lives we shape with our decisions. As she walks out of the courthouse, the sun setting behind her, Miranda makes a vow, a silent promise. She can't change the past, but she will fight for a better future. She has to.